Chapter 19. When things go wrong in life, they can go pretty wrong. People can hate you, people can die. When things go wrong in time travel, they go wrong. Worse. Wronger, Jade thought. So much wronger than she could have imagined. This beach and this bay, Jade thought about the fact that this whole place felt unfinished. Darling ULV Strandon, and, in the better wind, these giant monstrous robots aiming their cannons at her and Traveler. In this black, bleak place, it was terrifyingly surreal. Jade was about to say something. The stranger in white shouted at her to get back in Purge. Traveler instantly typed buttons on his watch and shot the bulky metal enforcers, stopped the X8s dead in their tracks, blasted them with a surge from his wrist. Blue light danced in an electrical arc around them. Jade breathed a sigh of relief. The wind picked up. Then the angel came. The first angel, Cain, created a fissure in reality and emerged. His appearance was a stark shadow in the sky against the bleak background of Bad Wolf Bay. Cain's arms were crossed in front of him. His wiry frame had the added bulk of what appeared to be wings. Dingy, clockwork iron wings. Cain unfolded them, giving Traveler pause. He took his hands from his face, features thin, angular and angry. Looked almost identical to Valentine.
So, you're the first, the one who created them. The wrathful angels are your progeny.
Traveler demanded.
Don't worry about that. You should know I'm the one who threw you into the white void.
Cain shouted down as he hovered, strange metallic wings cracking and swaying slowly. Jade shouted.
You're the asshole that shot us into the land of fiction, son of a bitch.
This isn't the land of fiction, Jade.
Cain's eyes leered directly into hers. It frightened her briefly, how full of spite and cruelty they were. Then it pissed her off even more. She turned to her all-white time traveler.
Can you please kill this
Fine. Get to Purge. I'll be there momentarily.
Traveler aimed his watch. Fired. Cain caught the Azor plasma boat in midair, suddenly swooped down from above. His iron wings made a sharp, distinctive mechanical slicing sound as he plummeted, powerfully kicking Traveler square in the chest. The stranger in white was sent flying, landing well over 20 feet away, hard, onto the wet sand. For the moment, the X8s remained still, trapped in a recursive stable time warp from Traveler's watch, which, at that moment, Cain began to stalk toward, his wings scissor-locking on his back. His prints were heavy in the wet sand of the gray beach. Heavy, salt wind sprayed onward, almost pressing against Traveler as he struggled to a semi-crouched position. Jade ran inside.
Gun!
She shouted. Cornelius popped his head from around the chrome lectern as a large, bulky weapon instantly materialized. Jade grabbed it. Just what she had imagined, a big-ass pull rifle. Like in a video game, she cocked it, felt the fob watch pounding against her chest as her heartbeat increased. She ran to the main entrance, and promptly slammed her head and the gun into the wall. Purge wasn't going to let her pass.
What the hell do you think you're doing, bitch?
Jade kicked the wall.
He needs me.
In response to Jade's rage, Purge turned on the flat holographic viewing panel above the console. The cloister bell echoed in the immense control room. She looked up to the view screen. On it, she saw Traveler had just gained his footing as Cain arrived. Traveler threw a fistful of wet sand in Cain's face. The angel stepped back. Traveler set his wristwatch, firing a pulsing blue electrical explosion at him. Cain's wings enclosed ferociously fast, dissipating the attack. Stray bolts of blue electricity coursed in the sand around the Lord of the Wrathful Angels. Traveler ran toward the enshrouded Cain. His fist was glowing with crackling cerulean light, and Traveler slung a hard left at the angel. It almost connected. Inside of Purge, she saw Cain had slowed down the stranger in white somehow. The punch was about an inch from connecting and Traveler stopped moving. Cain retracted his wings, and encased Traveler's left fist with his right hand, using his other hand to tear off Traveler's wristwatch. The explosion backfired instantly, sending the energy blast right back to Traveler. It was brutal. It was fast. Traveler was burned and singed. Once more the stranger in white was sent to the ground, save for his arm. Kane held his forearm in a steel grip. Traveler was almost unconscious from the impact of the desperate explosion, which rebounded right back to him. Kane ground down further on Traveler's arm. He kicked Traveler in the face directly once. Traveler swayed for a second on his knees.
Jade.
Kane held up Traveler's watch. He peered at it closely for a moment, then turned his vicious gaze to the column.
Jade,
he shouted. In the distance, Jade saw a black Egyptian obelisk materialize, only to then instantly vanish.
Jade, answer me.
She shook the image from her thought. She had other things to worry about right now.
Let me out, Purge!
Jade screamed.
Negative,
came the woman's voice over the booming intercom. Kane crushed Traveler's watch in his hands. He grotesquely adopted an overly sad look on his face as he dropped the piece of the time traveler's weapon. It was childish, unnerving, cruel. Jade felt a distinct drop in her stomach, a wave of terror and anger deep inside of her. The X-8s were immediately freed. They regrouped, checking their weapons as they aligned behind him.
This is not the land of fiction, Jade.
Kane's voice was soothing, calm, level. He blinked, smiled at Purge, took a deep breath. Kane then promptly snapped Traveler's forearm in two. Traveler collapsed for the third or fourth time that day on his back on the beach. Wet gray sand drenched the back of his head, soaked all of his white clothes. His watch destroyed, arm shattered. Severely burned, chest fractured, he laid on the ground in excruciating pain. Agony was temporarily immobilizing him.
Come on out, Jade.
Kane instructed. He raised his eyebrows.
I've an order to take you back to Valentine as well. Come out. Surrender, or your boyfriend in white dies right now.
Jade turned from the holoscreen. For an instant, she thought she saw a man in a corner. For a billionth of a second, just briefly, a man dressed in all black. Or just dark. Standing in shadows, she shook her head and dropped the weapon. Maybe. Jade sighed. I'm just losing it.
You have to let me go. Perfect? Negative. I could be going crazy, but this is kind of making sense. Listen, just follow me logically. I know in the future that Traveler is supposed to die in here, on this floor. Matter of fact, right below you. Or on you, or whatever. Point is, he is to be here, so this has already been set. I have to go out there and get him. One way or the other, he's coming back in here.
Purge's soft background hum engulfed the silence for the moment. The ship was thinking.
Let me go.
Jade's lungs expanded without her authorization. She took a deep breath. She pressed on the wall, and Purge let her out. In Bad Wolf's Bay, the X-8s were rearranging themselves into another formation. Kane unfolded the metal wings, and the Angel picked up the unconscious time traveler, slung him over his shoulder. Kane shouted vague instructions to the robots, and 4 behemoth creatures surrounded Purge. They placed high-tech orange and glowing purple devices around the column. Zapping, crackling light erupted from the devices, creating a swirling white energy around Purge. Power surged forward, and the energy field became a single stream. A white circle of energy surrounded the pillar. Jade was terrified. She turned to see Kane flying off. Then, one of the mechanical beasts grabbed her. Jade's world went black. The man in black watched the time traveler and the Lord of the Wrathful Angels fight it out. The traveler didn't do so great. Ugh, nothing can't be repaired. He rubbed his hands over his grizzled, scraggly facial hair. He stopped leaning on the black Egyptian obelisk, absently made a pointing motion with his finger. A bright light opened from the obelisk, as if a stone door had been slid away.
Why?
Came her voice. The man in black could just see her silhouette, darkened from a light somewhere deep inside.
Why did you bring me back here?
The man in black looked at her for just a moment, just acknowledged her, then turned back to watch Traveler and Jade being carried away.
I thought you might remember what it was like when we first started.
The silhouette placed one hand on her hip.
How is that working out for you?
The man in black smiled a grim, sad smile.
I guess we'll have to see, now won't we?
The door to the ancient African ruin sealed shut behind him. Valentine was sitting on the throne in front of the vast tapestry. He was blurry at first, as Jade awoke to the musty, old interior of Valentine's Sidrat. Jade was in chains. Oh my God, are you kidding me?
Seriously?
She almost whined as she tugged against them. They were tight, unyielding. Valentine came into focus more as she stared at him. He and Cain must be twins, or something. Valentine suddenly grinned, a creepy, sick, forced grin. Jade struggled to sit up on her butt. She looked around, saw a traveler strapped in a metal tube. The stranger in white was hooked up to wires and restrained with rope. An odd, glowing red rope that would occasionally get extremely bright. Traveler winced. Jade leered at Valentine.
You prick! What the hell do you think you're doing?
I am absorbing your friend's Artron energy. Valentine beamed. Allows me to alter reality itself. And you. Jade didn't let him finish his sentence.
Let me out of here now!
She screamed. Valentine grimaced, shook his head. He pointed to something behind Jade. She couldn't see, but she could hear and smell. Suddenly, a monster came out from behind her. A real freaking monster. A damn werewolf. Jade shrieked. The werewolf walked over to where Valentine was standing, stared at her with immense canine jaws dripping with anticipatory saliva. He patted Kerrigan, his werewolf, on the head, then pointed at Jade's shackles. You promised to behave.
I'm not promising you shit. Go to hell.
Valentine shrugged, looking at Kerrigan. As close to a yes as I'm likely to get. Kerrigan growled, squinted. Jade stood as she rubbed her wrists, kicking the chains away.
Where have you taken us?
She glared at Valentine. She heard Traveler grunt in pain, dashed over to him. She stood looking at the rope and other apparatus, which was draining him dry. This is the Sidrat. Space and an interdimensional all-purpose transport. Shouldn't exist, actually. I stole it from the warlords. They're precursors to the Time Lords.
Am I supposed to be impressed? Why the hell would you think I could possibly give a damn? Shit, asshole, what are we doing here? You're just going to drain him to death. And what am I supposed to do? Sit here and watch? You want to watch me cry, you sick son of a bitch?
Valentine stopped grinning. Sighed. Jade. This is inevitable. I set this in motion before you were even born. I set your ancestor in Renaissance France to her death. And your relative in New York in the Industrial Age. I almost had you. Your power.
I don't have any power.
Jade wiped tears angrily from her face. Valentine looked at her, drew closer, and softened his voice. Not yet. You will. It just hasn't happened. Not time. And when it does, Jade shoved him.
I'm sick of everybody wanting something from me. All anyone ever does is take from me.
Get used to it. Valentine leveled his eyes at her. Kane entered. Jade stepped away from the two of them, put Traveler in between them. She rubbed her hand through his hair, teared up as she looked down at him. After we drain him, I'm going to drain you. Valentine snapped his fingers, smiling again. Kane headed toward Jade, followed by the werewolf Kerrigan. Jade was scared and angry. Tears flowed and her heart pounded in her chest. They were going to take her life essence, and her friends. There was nothing she could do about it. They were going to kill her. Jade was going to die. Her heart pounded and pounded, incessantly thudding on the antique fob watch. It hung around her neck right over her heart. It was heavy. It used to be reassuring. Not anymore. She didn't know if she was more horrified or enraged by what was happening. All at once, Jade found herself screaming, louder than she had ever screamed before. It wasn't the sound that was overwhelming. It was the light, erupting. Blinding light came from her necklace. It was a beam at first. Then the light was pouring out of her hands. Then her eyes. It was a deep, strong, unwavering power from deep within her, channeled through the fob watch necklace. This power was erupting, and she had no idea the depth from which it came. All from within, she felt like a god. The room in Valentine's Sidrat became as bright as a newborn star. Then there was a slam into silence. Her light, her power. It was so bright it almost had a sound, when it suddenly vanished. The absence was noticeable. All seemed very quiet. Jade blinked and looked around. No, not just quiet. Quiet as the dead. Nothing was moving. Nothing. Kerrigan, the towering werewolf, was frozen mid-snarl, the drool frozen in his gnashing maw. Kane was grabbing at Jade, frozen as his grip was nearly in range. His immense iron wings trailed behind him, motionless and soundless. Valentine was smiling like an evil fool, his grin raised toward the ceiling. His fingertips met in front of his chest. Son of a bitch was actually laughing. It seemed like he was on top of the world. Jade took in the surroundings. She had stopped everything. Somehow, stopped everything.